If you listened to the last episode, you know that this isn't about the wins. The wins have been real, they matter, and they have definitely changed the direction of this country immensely. But winning elections and finishing the job are two separate things. And this is the part of the conversation that hits people differently, depending on where they're standing. For some, it's frustrating, for others, it's confusing. And for a lot of people who have been paying close attention for a long time, it's starting to feel urgent. Because power and corruption don't disappear when it loses an election. It doesn't vanish when the headlines change, and it definitely doesn't surrender just because voters send a message. What it does instead is wait. It waits in agencies, it waits in processes, it waits behind procedure, silence, and delay. This episode is not about attacking Trump, it's not about questioning his agenda, and it's not to discredit the wins or pretend nothing has changed. It's about the uncomfortable reality that some of the most important fights haven't actually been started yet. And time, not opposition, is the biggest threat to finishing them. So today we're talking about where the momentum slows, why accountability keeps getting delayed, and what happens if these questions don't get answered before the window closes. And that's the tea. Before we get into it, if you're enjoying this show and enjoying these conversations, make sure that you're subscribed to the show. If you're listening on YouTube, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. And if you're listening to us on Spotify and Apple, make sure you hit the follow button and give us a rating. It really, really, really helps us grow. And if you ever want to get in touch with us or see what we're doing behind the scenes, follow us on socials. We're on TikTok, Instagram, X, and YouTube. I will link our socials in the episode description below. You can also reach out to us and contact us through email. That'll also be listed in the episode description below. So let's start with the things that actually tell you whether any of this stuff actually lasts: accountability and corruption. So before we go any further, I want to slow down for a second. Dad, you've been following this stuff closely for years. You know the details, the history, the evidence, and the timelines way more than I do. I think a lot of listeners fall into different camps here. I think there's people who don't follow politics closely at all and honestly don't even know why the phrases corrupt DOJ or weaponized FBI get thrown around. And then there are people like me who know the top line arguments and talking points, but don't always know the full evidence and how this actually all fits together. And then there's people like you who do follow all of this and they're on your level of knowledge of these things. But the things that people like me know for the top line arguments, like the 2020 election being stolen or January 6th being more complicated than it's
Right.
presented. And then there's people like you who do follow all of this and they're on your level of knowledge of these things. But the things that people like me know for the top line arguments, like the 2020 election being stolen or January 6th being more complicated than it's
Right.
presented by the media and the politicians, Biden's DOJ going after political enemies way more than Trump, actually. Like, it's common knowledge that they went after Trump, but there's way more than
Yeah.
just Trump that they went
Oh, yeah.
after. And then long-standing concerns about just the FBI and intelligence agencies. Whether people agree with these claims or not, they're clearly shaping how a lot of Americans view accountability right now. So before we talk about what the DOJ and FBI should be doing today, I think we need to understand the corruption that we're dealing with here and the corruption that we as Americans have been dealt and why so many people
Right.
don't trust these institutions in the first place. So walk us through that, Dad.
Well, I mean, I'm sure the corruption can go back decades, but in the Trump era, it started as soon as he decided to run for president the first time. For
Mhm.
whatever reason, it panicked the Washington elite and they opened up the Russian collusion case. I mean, just when he was running for office, they had to build a narrative against him that he was somehow colluding with Russia, in contact with Russia, the Russian dossier. And that was all paid for by Hillary Clinton's law firm. And everybody knows it, but nothing's been done about it. And then when he won, they kept the hearings going, they
Mhm.
kept the investigations going. You had Peter Strzok, Lisa Page's girlfriend, Andrew McCabe, James Comey, all at the FBI, creating a narrative that he was colluding with Russia. And the sad part is they even had that report done, and I forget the person who led the report. They found nothing, but it
Mhm.
didn't matter. The media, if you can remember, it was nightly. This is the breaking point. He's going to have to resign. He's going to be impeached. He's going to jail. It was nightly.
And he never did because he's like, "What did I do?"
Exactly.
Yeah.
It just went on, but in the process, General Flynn had his life destroyed almost.
Who's General
He
Flynn for
was
the people
his
that don't know?
he was Trump's national security advisor, and
So what Tulsi Gabbard is right now?
yes,
Okay.
but only for a month. But he knew because he worked in the Obama administration. He had spent decades in the government in the military. He basically knew where all the bodies were buried, for lack of a better way to put it.
Mhm.
He knew all the corruption, and Trump was going to elevate him to the National Security Council, and they went after him. And Comey brags about it. He's bragged about it in public, how they basically set him up in an interview. I wouldn't be surprised if a certain former vice president was in on it.
Kamala?
Because, no, I'd go before her.
Joe Biden?
No, Mike Pence.
No, Mike Pence. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Forgot about
But
him.
anyways, he was forced to resign in disgrace. And the only reason he admitted guilt was because the FBI threatened to go after his family and put them in jail. It's a long story I'm not going to go into, but
Okay.
he knew how corrupt all these people were. So he was the first one. Before Trump, they had to take him out. They took him out within 30 days of the Trump presidency.
Wow.
But people went to jail. Paul Manafort, Trump's campaign manager, went to jail.
For what?
Colluding with Russians.
If that's been proven false, how did he go to
Because he had a
jail?
business deal that somehow they got him to admit, just to save a. Sometimes you just say, I'm guilty on that because you're not going to get railroaded into something
Because you don't
else.
want your family like being involved. Yeah.
They destroyed Carter Page, who worked on the Trump campaign and advisor. Peter Navarro went to jail. Steve Bannon went to jail.
Oh, yeah.
Trump's son was,
Eric or Don
I think,
Jr.?
I think it was Don Jr. was under deposition more times than anybody like in the
Oh, that
last
was actually
50.
Eric.
Was
Yeah.
it Eric? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they put the family through hell. They
You
didn't
should read his new book.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They raided Mar-a-Lago with an FBI, coming in with guns a-blazing and,
Went through Barron and Melania's room.
But
Yeah.
when Joe had documents from being a vice president in his garage, they just went in and got him.
Which, by the way, like it's normal for presidents to take documents with them.
The
Like
president of the United States,
all of them have, right?
they have, but even if they're classified, because the only one who can declassify documents is the president. He can declassify constitutionally. He can declassify any document he wants. So the whole thing was bogus.
Yeah.
Now, Biden, on the other hand, as vice president, cannot declassify any documents that he wants. So he took documents to his garage next to his Corvette without having the constitutional authority to classify those documents.
Yeah.
Trump, having the constitutional authority to declassify anything, took those documents and he gets raided by the FBI. I mean, the whole thing, that's not justice. That's just plain out revenge, what they did to him and his family and all the people surrounding him that went to prison.
Yeah.
So the DOJ under Biden and Obama was dirt, and they were corrupt. And there was a meeting prior to Obama leaving the office with the worst of the worst, John Brennan, former CIA director, James Comey, Joe Biden, and Barack Obama, where all this was calculated and done. They'll never get Obama for it because he's like Slick Willie.
Yeah.
He'll just keep, doing his cool little speeches and stuff, and everybody loves him. But he's a crook too. He's a criminal. Biden's a criminal. Comey is a criminal, and John Brennan is a dirtbag criminal. So they have a lot to answer for. But I don't know if they're going to. And if we're talking about disappointments in this administration, 3 letters that are a major disappointment: DOJ.
So, yeah, but any other context before we get into that you think is important?
Well, I think it's been on the news for 10 years. It's just out there. I mean, they've gone after him for everything.
So, I guess what I should ask instead is how do you know that all of this is fake when all the news has reported it?
Well, when they finally did the hearing on Russia, there was nothing indictable, and they had to admit it publicly. I mean, that was
Who did?
the Democrats.
Okay.
I mean, the hearing that they had in Congress, and I can't think of the name of the lead investigator that he was the former director of the FBI.
James Comey?
No, prior to him under Bush.
Okay.
Highly respected, but even they couldn't find anything. He put in his report there was nothing that he could be charged with. So the whole Russian collusion was fake, and Trump, they used to laugh because he called it a hoax. He knew it was because he knew he didn't do it.
Yeah. Okay.
You also had the January 6th committee?
Oh, yeah. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like,
Okay.
how do we know that was a fake scam? I guess from my perspective, it is true that people stormed the Capitol. Like, we all saw it with our eyes.
Right.
What was the part that was illegal? And, like, what was the part that was, like, made up by the FBI or whatever?
Well, it's coming out now. There was probably 200 plus FBI people in the crowd fomenting the crowd.
Like, pretending to be citizens.
Pretending and trying to get them riled up and stirred up. And don't forget, they didn't get riled and stirred up until the hoses were turned on them and the rubber bullets were being shot at them. That part gets conveniently left out, okay? They had every right to go to the Capitol and protest. Since when don't we have the right to protest something?
Peacefully, but then
Peacefully. It
what
turned
about
violent.
storming the
It
Capitol?
turned violent. And
Yeah.
those were stupid people. I don't care if the police were waving them in to walk through. I would never walk into that trap.
Yeah.
I mean, those may have been some useful idiots on the other side. I mean, Alex Jones was there. I can remember seeing the tape. He's standing up telling the people, turn around, go back, do not go in.
Oh.
Oh, he was warning them. warning,
Really?
shouting, saying, "Get away from here," because he knew exactly what was being
Like,
done.
he was down to protest, but he was like
But he knew when it started to fall
when they
apart.
started so the police were waving them in, so that's
Please.
something
Yeah.
that's not really talked about
And you
either.
don't see the video of that one female police officer beating the hell out of that female on the ground outside.
Oh, I don't know who you're talking about.
Just Google it. She beat her unconscious.
For what?
I don't know, because she was protesting. And then we had Ashley Babbitt get shot by Lieutenant Byrd, who's now Captain Byrd because, he testified to the committee. So that committee was made up of all Democrats and two sleazebag Republicans, Adam Kinzinger and Lynn Cheney.
Mhm.
No other Republicans would dare get on that committee because they knew the whole thing was a setup.
Mm.
And it was. And people went to jail. Now, out of the 1,200 were pardoned, maybe 50 people belonged in jail. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It wasn't a completely innocent crowd.
Yeah.
They did not need to do what they did. But the majority of the people that went to jail, grandmothers, sons, daughters, people just there.
Like, their lives were ruined.
Yeah, one person went to jail and wasn't even there.
What did they go to jail for? Like, what was the crime that they committed?
Well, some of them never got to trial. They just were put in the prison and were rotting.
Wait, that's illegal, though.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. After
everyone has the right to a fair
Fair-
and free trial.
fair and speedy trial.
Yeah.
Not some of them.
So
And some just made plea deals because it was going to be like 20 years or 10 years. It was just,
But Trump's pardoned them all. They're all out of jail now,
oh,
right?
but maybe 5 or 7. Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
I think there could be some other charges associated with it.
Okay.
But as far as that incident itself, he was pardoned. Now, people were angry because he pardoned them. But they have no problem with these morons in Minnesota truly doing an insurrection against ICE officers and federal installations. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And there's nobody on the right buried in those protesters trying to foment them. Okay.
Yeah.
There was 200 and something FBI agents in that crowd, fomenting the crowd,
Mm.
whipping them into a frenzy. And that's why Christopher Wray, the former director, resigned. He knew he was caught in a lie. Matter of fact, he's such a smart guy. He never gave a number that there was anybody in the crowd. He just wasn't aware and they were looking into it, which basically is an admission of, yeah, we had a bunch of people in the crowd.
Interesting. Okay.
Once again, nothing's been done about
So,
it.
yeah, so that context matters a lot because I think once you understand the history and the corruption and why the trust has been broken in the first place, it changes how you look at these institutions, and Pam Bondi and Kash Patel are doing today, which is
Useless.
I understand. So, but let's reset for a second and talk about what these agents are actually supposed to do for the people that don't know. So, at the most basic level, the DOJ exists to enforce the law equally, regardless of politics and power party, right?
Justice is blind.
Yep. And then the FBI exists to investigate issues or serious crimes and protect the country from real threats, not to manage narratives or act as political weapons.
They investigate and they refer the crime to the DOJ to prosecute.
So then that's the standard. And to be clear, under new leadership, there have been measurable improvements on the FBI side, which I know you'll probably agree, but like violent crime is down right now. Multiple terrorist plots have been disputed and public safety metrics are improving. But critics, including you, argue that this is only part of the job. So while the FBI has made progress on these things like violent crime and external threats, the internal corruption and the institutional abuses we just talked about haven't been meaningfully investigated. So here's where people start connecting the dots. We've seen what the FBI can do when it wants to act, especially under the previous administration. But when it comes to internal corruption, the silence is kind of standing out to you and other people that think like you. So
Absolutely.
now that we have Kash Patel here, so just for everyone's background, he spent years warning about corruption inside these institutions, but nothing has changed. He even wrote a book, I think it's called Government Gangsters. I haven't read it, but I think it's essentially about how freaking corrupt everything is, right? In your opinion, what should we have reasonably seen by now from an FBI director like Kash Patel? Real action that restores trust without turning us into everything that we criticized when the previous FBI abused their power. What would be reasonable that we would have expected?
Reasonable would be Hillary Clinton should have been indicted for.
But he doesn't indict.
No, he should have been referred
Okay.
to the department.
To the DOJ.
John Brennan, one of the biggest criminals of them all. James Clapper, James Comey.
James Comey was, though.
He was, and it was done really poorly, like almost on purpose, that it was so botched the way they did it. So I'm just saying something's going on because they indicted like it was like eating a hamburger under Biden. No matter what, you could be indicted for eating a ham sandwich under Biden.
Yeah.
These guys right now, Kash Patel and Pam Bondi have so much evidence out there, and the clock is ticking on the statute of limitations, and it's passed on some of them, and they've indicted nobody for blatant crimes
How do you know that the previous FBI hasn't cleared everything out and made it almost impossible for them to do their job?
If they cleared it all out, what do you mean, like burn the documents?
Yeah,
Well,
like,
then
I
they
guess I don't
then
know.
then you know what? If they found that out, then those people should be indicted
Mhm.
for destroying evidence.
But
There
how do you
was
know they haven't been, like is there any, like, releases on that or
that
anything?
that
Like
news would get out.
okay.
That would make headlines. So they've done nothing. The only thing I can think is that I know there's grand juries that are impaneled in Florida, which thank God in Florida, and they're thinking about possibly a conspiracy case. So a conspiracy case, the statute of limitations disappears. It can go back 2 years, 5 years, 12 years.
Mhm.
That's the only way they're going to get this whole group. Now, a conspiracy case may take years to put together, but Cash and Pam, the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
And the people are getting a little bit impatient because if they don't stop it now and the Democrats get control, they have no idea what's coming. Because if they got away with what they did before, there's going to be a lot more of it.
Yeah.
So I'm very disappointed. I had high hopes for Cash Patel. Not so much for Bondi, a little bit, but I think Cash Patel's been the biggest disappointment in the Trump administration.
So, why do you think Trump is honestly settling for this?
That's the one thing I'm disappointed with Trump about.
Mm,
I would not let this go on much longer. You have the midterms coming up, they will impeach him again,
yeah.
which will then suck the oxygen out of the rest of his term, which will
Yes.
then suck the oxygen out of the DOJ to try to do anything.
Yeah.
The clock's ticking and they're almost out of time.
Yeah, totally agree. So, yeah, I just don't get why he's settling for that. But anyway, so to be clear, again, the FBI investigates. They can't actually finish the job, though. That's what the DOJ is for. Because at the end of the day, if investigations
Just go nowhere if they
go
don't.
go nowhere, if well, I guess what I was saying at the end of the day, investigations don't mean anything if prosecutions don't
Right.
follow. So that brings us to the other half of this equation, which is the DOJ. So for anyone listening who doesn't follow this stuff or pay attention to it, the DOJ is where accountability either happens or dies. The FBI gathers evidence, the DOJ decides whether anyone actually faces the consequences. And that's exactly why the expectations here are even higher. So, over the past few years, we've watched the DOJ move aggressively when it came to Trump and his allies and people on our side, as we just discussed. But when it comes to investigating and prosecuting high profile corruption on their side,
Not so much.
there's just been a lack of movement, right? And again, to be fair, it's not like this DOJ hasn't done anything, which I know you'll argue, Dad, but we've seen wins like the Maduro prosecution. That was the DOJ, right?
Right.
They've had some successful prosecutions with cartel
Yeah,
operations,
for
fentanyl
sure.
trafficking, and then national security cases, and then some movement on violent crime. So all of these things do matter. They're very important, but the DOJ isn't just a crime fighting agency. It's the institution that decides whether this power gets held accountable or not, right?
Justice. It's a cardinal virtue. One of
Yeah.
the four cardinal virtues, someone to get what they are due.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people are due an indictment.
How long does this restraint stay possible before it starts looking like avoidance? Because again, I don't know, why does Trump just keep settling for this? And given that
I
there's
know.
actually so much
Did in his first term. I thought he learned, and so I'm disappointed on on this and a couple of his foreign policies in this term, Department of Justice and a couple of things other, but
Mhm.
but and I'm not saying I dislike Pam Bondi, and I don't know, put on the tinfoil hat. Does somebody get in that position? Do they get a visit from somebody high up in the world, the elites, that walk into their office and say, "You're not going to do this,
Yeah.
because if you do, your family will be tortured." I don't know. I'm just going to the extreme because these are such obvious indictments sitting there.
Mhm.
Low-hanging fruit, and Cash Patel's riding around on his plane, and Pam Bondi's doing Sean Hannity at night, and I mean, doing his show, and I mean, do your job. How about that?
Yeah. Let's just bring this all together real quick. If this lack of action continues, investigations continue to stay cautious, and the prosecutions don't happen at all, and the institutions never really confront their own corruption, what do you realistically believe the consequences are? Not hypothetical, not worst case Twitter scenarios, but in real world, politically and culturally, and for the future of our country, what
I
happens?
think for the future of our country, it's disastrous because they can get away with this. They basically know that the corrupt politicians will know that they own the institutions. The people don't own them anymore. The
Mhm.
politicians do, and they can do what they want with little impunity, and we all pay that price. This isn't about revenge.
Mhm.
This these indictments are about so it doesn't happen again. So the next corrupt group of people that get into power, whether it be Republican or
They
Democrat,
know they can't do it.
they know they may not get away with it and go to jail. And that it isn't this it's not revenge. It's not retribution. Justice is somebody gets what they are due.
Hmm.
And this is justice. Even if Trump in his speeches say, I'm your retribution, it doesn't matter what he says. Just is blind and overlooks what he says. It overlooks what we think. It's people get what they are due.
And that tension between what's been done and what still hasn't been done doesn't just show up in the FBI and DOJ. It shows up everywhere, which is why this next area matters more than people realize. And one of those things that's become very clear over the past few election cycles is the where you land politically. A lot of Americans don't trust how our elections are run these days, and that distrust didn't come out of nowhere. We now have widespread mail-in voting where absentee ballots used to be limited. Ballot harvesting laws vary widely by states. Signature verification standards are inconsistent. And then there's still states that just don't require voter ID at all, which is crazy because we require ID to
Yeah.
board planes, open bank accounts, buy alcohol, rent cards, you name it, but not to vote. So when you have systems like this, fraud isn't just hypothetical, it's inevitable. And the system makes it so easy and untraceable and almost impossible to prosecute. So when people say, well, prove the fraud, the answer is simple. You can't prove the fraud because the system is built to make proof nearly impossible. So this is one of the things that Trump has ran on was fixing this. And yet we're a year into his second term. The structure that allows this has not changed at all, which raises the obvious question, who actually has the power to fix it and why hasn't it happened yet? Because I know it varies by state and their state laws. So why would he run on that if he can't fix it? Or can he? I don't get
He
it.
can to a degree. Federal government can set the guidelines. They can have certain base laws that you must follow. Like everyone over 18, you can't discriminate on color, race, and all that stuff. Everyone's allowed to vote. Those are national voting laws.
Okay.
But the states are to carry out their own election how they see fit. Is there voter ID? Can there be mules taking ballots across, delivering ballots and stuff like that, the chain of custody? Unfortunately, he can only change so much. I'm disappointed that he hasn't fought about this more, but the man is fighting for everything. I mean,
He can only do so
he can only
much.
do, you
And he's
cannot,
done a lot.
you cannot turn the Queen Mary around in the Detroit River. It's just
Yeah.
not going to work. But that's, once again, citizens need to be educated on their civics and like you said, that's common sense stuff. No voter ID, but yet you got to have an ID to get into a bar. You got to have a guy
Yeah.
ID. I mean, it's silly. And if anyone's fighting against those things, why would anybody support them?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's disappointing that he hasn't changed much, but at the same time, it's disappointing he doesn't have the power to change all of it.
So there's really nothing he can do about voter ID.
Very little. He can use the bully pulpit.
Can
Keep
Congress?
talking about, no, I mean, it's a state. They can only do so much. The states, and properly so, we're a federated system of states. They run their elections.
Okay.
Okay. So when you get down to this, basically bringing religion or faith into it, when you have a society that claims for a big part that God is dead, faith is irrelevant, you don't end up with the most virtuous people running the show. Because
Yeah.
people that seek power then are usually not people of virtue. And if we elect people that are not of virtue, we're going to have state elections like this.
Yeah, which is why small elections are super important.
Yes,
School boards,
mayors, council people,
it
because
all
these are
matters.
people, some of them, maybe one out of the 10 or 5 council members might be a state representative,
Yeah.
might end up being a senator. So
Yep.
you have to really choose carefully.
Yeah, and a lot of people just sit out on those
They
elections.
stood
You
out.
shouldn't.
So
You
these
shouldn't.
people who are maybe not have the best intentions, they're all about power.
Mhm.
They get in because nobody votes. And then once they're in, they have name recognition. So when they run for that higher office, they already have name recognition and they move up the
It's
ladder.
the swamp. Yeah.
Yep. And
Yep.
so we're all partly responsible for that too.
We are. Okay, so any other issues that you've been again, this isn't to trash Trump or anything, but this is just anything that you've been disappointed or frustrated with in terms of lack of action or something maybe that has been done?
Well, besides the DOJ, I'd say currently something happening right now this weekend, this day, I mean, is the protests in Iran. He's kind of talking like he's going to do something militarily. I wish he wouldn't, and I hope he doesn't.
How do you know you just won't drop another bomb?
I know, but you know what? I like the fact of Venezuela. I don't think we need to keep interjecting ourselves in the Middle East.
Because they're always going to fight.
It's going to be going on forever. I feel sorry for the people of Iran, but they are protesting. It's up to them. Now, what they're doing, though, Scott Bessent is a genius Secretary of the Treasury. He's putting tariffs on anybody that does business with Iran. So that all these countries that want to do business with Iran are now going to pay us a 25% tariff. So that gets all these people stopping doing business with Iran. That'll crush them economically, and these protesters will grow in numbers, and they'll take care of a business on their own. I hope that's the path that he stays on.
Okay.
But that's about it. Otherwise, I'm still MAGA 100%.
All right.
1 year, we got 3 more to go, and then maybe another term, possibly.
But here's the thing that we need to sit with. This moment doesn't last forever.
Nope.
The changes we talked about today and the last episode, they only exist inside a narrow window. Because once the midterms hit, the
Yes.
entire game changes. So that's what people need to understand. It's a bigger election than small elections, but it's still a smaller election. And a lot of people my age, you guys don't vote in the midterms. It's so important that you do. Because if Democrats take the House and the Senate, nothing we just discussed will ever move
Nope.
forward. No accountability, no
Nope.
reform, no election integrity, not the economy, not health, nothing, nothing. Everything's going to be, they're going to impeach Trump. And that's what's so annoying too. Because do you know how much money is wasted when they put resources towards trying to
Right.
impeach Trump when he shouldn't be freaking
And you
impeached?
do you realize that impeachment now has been cheapened because they did it to him twice?
Yeah.
You know that Nixon, everyone said the last president before Trump impeached was Nixon. No, first it was Clinton. But
Hmm.
before Nixon didn't even want to face impeachment because it was such a bad thing. He resigned prior to the impeachment.
Yeah.
Now they impeach Clinton, they impeach Trump twice. It's not even a thing anymore.
They impeached
So
Clinton. I didn't even know that.
yeah, he was an impeached. Yeah, he was impeached. He just wasn't convicted.
Oh, well, was that for the Monica Lewinsky
Yeah.
thing? Well,
Actually, it was lying under oath was
okay.
the actual charge.
Well, I mean, he did do that, so,
Right.
but whatever. Anyways, but we've already seen what happens when they're in charge. They impeach instead of govern the people, and they protect illegal immigrants while American citizens get ignored, and then they defend criminals and activists while demonizing law enforcement. They excuse riots, they minimize violence, and they pretend chaos is compassion. They've passed policies that have drove inflation through the roof, wiped out savings, and told working families that it's transitory. So this isn't about disagreement, it's about policies and our culture, to be quite frank. And when Democrats show you who they fight for, believe them. It's not the American worker, it's not families trying to get ahead, and it's not the citizens expected to follow the law. If this administration doesn't enforce action now before the midterms, the system's going to win, not because Trump failed, but because part of his cabinet and Congress aren't really working for his agenda. So this isn't a spectacular moment. It's not enough to agree, it's not enough to vent online. Republicans have to show up, they have to vote, and they have to remember exactly what they're up against. So this is a message to the people in power now. Get it done, not later, now, not after another review, not once it's politically convenient, because if you don't act while you have the authority, then you lose it. This is the message to the rest of us. You don't get reform by staying at home. You don't get rid of corruption by sitting out a small election or a midterm because you think it doesn't matter as much as the presidential election, because to be quite frank, it actually matters the same, if not more. Those people that you vote for in those small elections make it possible for the president to put his agenda in place. But you don't protect this country by forgetting who the other side is. This is the moment. Keep fighting. Go out and vote this November 2026. Either the pressure finally gets applied or the system wins again.
Over and out from Solo Studios.
Thanks, guys.